And I'm guessing it's no accident that they're called Jefferson cafes.
I modeled them after my image of the dining table at Monticello and the kind of conversation that might have occurred there with Jefferson as a facilitator.
Joe, let me ask you, we have to bring names like Jefferson in to have people to have confidence to come in and have a discussion like this. The thing that seems different to me is when people think of the modern day politician, and I love that later in the show we're going to get into some of this issue of the modern day politician in another segment, but people seem to really, they have images, again, that maybe sort of say to them, the system is not working. Red states, blue states, you know, it's all predetermined. You can't trust a politician. What's the modern day view?
I'm the historian, and I'll give you the historical view, and the historical view is Jefferson was regarded as the devil incarnate. Abraham Lincoln was Illinois ape. In 1884, Grover Cleveland ran a candidacy in which he almost lost the presidency because he had an affair with a woman prior to marriage.
That doesn't happen with presidents.
We've always regarded these people who put themselves on the line to seek political office, they have been pilloried ever since there's been a country. And so when we compare the past, what's the difference between a politician and a statesman is 10 years in the grave, I think is what they say. That Lincoln doesn't become great until he's dead. And the same will be said for people like Bill Clinton, who knows how he'll be remembered 10 years down the line. Same with Mr. Bush. So in perspective, we may be wringing our hands that there is no
I like to
Lincoln.
concur that it was a bloody sport from the get-go. Aside from George Washington, even within the administration, Hamilton and Adams and Jefferson. Then you get, of course, the Federalists and Anti-Federalists get into it with the Jeffersonian Republican, and then Burr and Hamilton.
That gets very bloody.
This gets really bloody, so I'm not making this up. The only difference, though, is, I think Joe mentioned this, is that the Republic was based upon this idea of elite who will participate and follow and read newspapers and actually are engaged, 1% or 2% of the entire population. The expectation is, in the age of internet, people will be engaged more, but they're engaged to something else. MySpace or Facebook was more like it, and that's what they're interested in. Now, does it serve a republic if you have informed citizenry participate? Yes, you do get a benefit from that. But I'm not sure that the nature of the game has changed. The 24/7 coverage, the bloggers, YouTube, of course, the debates via the internet have increased awareness. But to what degree are you going to measure participation by voting or just being in tune? That's a different story.
So what's in between? If you're not going to go out and be an activist and you want to do more than voting, how can a concerned citizen be involved in this day and age besides starting a blog?
Well, you are, I mean, think about it this way. How are you going to measure participation? If by participation you just mean voting, yes, the voter turnout in the United States is amongst the lowest in the most industrial nations, advanced democracies. But if you measure how often we vote, how many things we elect, if you go by unconventional sometimes, which now is conventional, protesting, blocking the road, writing a letter, raising questions, raising awareness. We had an ambassador here talking about the Palestinian and Israeli issues. You should have seen the students, the type of questions that they were asking. And they are engaged in a different way, but you have to relate it to them, not to some kind of a benchmark such as elections. In addition, I think that what is political is everything. So if you bring it to the classroom and you engage them in terms of what they understand to be political, after September 11, it's much easier to teach politics. With the Iraqi war, it's much easier. With Afghanistan, it's much easier. And it's getting easier because they're engaged. I don't agree with this sentiment that they're not engaged.
Political discussion about whether they're interested, it's true, they've got all these opinions on the world. I want to come back to something, and the famous quote in politics from Tip O'Neill, all politics is local. Joe, Francine, I'd like to hear your perspective on this. do they know enough about what's going on in their daily lives in the places where they can be involved, the local politics process, or what they can do to, solve a problem in the community, whether it's political or not?
We need to create town meeting-like forums where people can talk about where they live, where they are right now. In fact, we're doing that. Maryland Public Television, working with the Harwood Institute, has been creating throughout the state a series of community listening project with 12 sites throughout the state. We are one of their sites working through the Institute. So we're convening groups of people. On TV they'd call them focus groups, but for us it's just a group of people who live in the community to talk about the place where they live and what about it is far from ideal and what could be improved.
They really need sometimes to see that there's a stake in their activity. So if you threaten to say a tuition hike and you make it well known that there's a tuition hike in the process, they may come out and vote. This is why the 60s rather were so active, was because of the draft. And they could literally die if they.
So you're saying it's not necessarily disengagement. People need to have something to be upset, concerned, outraged about to get very involved in that
gets
process.
to their special interest. One of the reasons that senior citizens are so engaged is because there's a continual discussion about Social Security, Medicare, and things like that affect their pocketbooks. Now, if you get to young people and you start to talk about their pocketbooks or their physical safety, then you'll find them more engaged. But at this age, at their age, they tend to be disengaged because they don't see the connection between their lives and what happens in Annapolis or even in Rockville, and certainly not in Washington.
And when you have these sort of listening sessions, I'm curious who comes?
Many people from the community who have found out about it are on our list to be informed. And welcome the opportunity to be in dialogue with college people. I agree with the idea about local issues because so many things start out as philosophical concepts but then come back to what's happening in the neighborhood. And I think another part of the problem can be that even if people feel strongly about an issue, they don't know that there are things you can do to express your point of view. So I let people know, for example, I was outraged about a proposal for changing parking regulations in my area. I started writing letters to everybody on county council, and then I put a blog on the listserv for my community, my neighborhood. I said, anybody who feels similarly, please write a letter, and so on, and it grew. And they were responsive.
It's a great discussion we've had with you, and we're gonna get to pick up on it with a specific discussion about a politician in a minute. But I want to thank all of our professors from Germantown, Rockville, Tacoma, all of you for coming on today. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by an author and Montgomery College history professor, Lee Annis. Stay tuned. You're watching Campus Conversations.
I don't think the public trusts politicians very much at all. A lot of times there's a stereotypical, oh, it's a politician, they're not going to tell the truth, or they're just out to get something for themselves.
Politicians these days are not always trustworthy.
It's just all a bunch of BS.
I think a lot of them are hypocrites.
The thing with politicians is that most of them see politics as a job.
They just want to see it their way and only their way instead of being open-minded and looking at everybody else's.
I think it's a popularity thing.
I don't agree with a lot of the politicians these days.
It's not honest anymore.